Hello, welcome everyone. My name is Ravi Gupta. I am an editor-in-chief of a magazine called Digital Learning. Digital Learning is India's first and the only magazine which is focusing on innovation in education since last 16 years. We have been focusing on the innovations in the classrooms, preschools, schools, and higher education. And we have been organizing several conferences, face-to-face conferences across the country in like more than 100 cities in India and outside India, in more than 10 cities, 10 countries actually. So in this period of lockdown and Corona, we have started a webinar series, and almost every week we are interacting with the education leaders of, and we are discussing that what is how will education change, how will it evolve after in the COVID-19 situation. So to discuss this topic, we have an eminent panel today, and we have an eminent moderator with us. He's none other than Sudhakar Rao. He is the Director of Branding of ICFI Group. I welcome you, Sudhakar ji. Thanks for joining. And we have
Thank you very much.
Eminent speakers, Sahil Agrawal, Dr. Yadvinder Singh Buttar, Dr. R.S. Bawa, Sharif Pratap Singh, Silki Jain, and Professor Parej Ahmed. And I welcome you all, and I welcome all the audience who are watching us. We are live on the Facebook, and thanks for joining us here. And you can, all the audience, you can ask questions here, and also on the Facebook. And our speakers of today will try to address as many questions as possible in their talks today. So with this, I am handing over to Mr. Sudhakar Rao. Welcome.
Thank you, Raviji, for this opportunity. Good afternoon to all the members who are logged on to this webinar. This online interaction, I'm sure, is going to be very interesting for the next 1 hour or so. And I'm very happy to be surrounded by the learned professionals around on this Zoom call. We have distinguished professionals from various universities in India that are leading in higher education. Today, we will be focusing on the role of tech and the blended learning. Now, the emerging scenario around the world and the emerging scenario that is also in India is something very interesting. I will cut out the general discussion and straight away get into what is relevant for us here in terms of education. There is not going to be something like post-COVID, at least in the near future. COVID or the virus is not going to go away unless there is a vaccine. So we can only talk about post-lockdown kind of scenario to be more relevant for ourselves. Now, post-lockdown is when we open up our colleges and schools and education institutions. We certainly are going to open up sooner or later, but how the emerging situation is playing out on all of us in terms of our responsibilities, in terms of our student enrollments, in terms of our teaching, engagement, so on and so forth. Again, we will not be focusing on student engagement in terms of enrollments, in terms of branding, in terms of placements. We will cut out all those things and we'll straight away focus on the learning part and how the role of tech can be envisaged to improve and enhance the learning in a situation like this where we are limited by physical distancing, we are limited by actual classroom learning, we are limited by the various issues that are going to bother us with respect to whether the virus is going to come alive, whether the virus is going to actually disturb us further. All these issues are there for us. In my view, I would like to give a context where we can see that in school scenarios, for example, variety of schools have finished their curricula and they have promoted the students and some of them are conducting exams. And then there is vacation called summer vacation going on at this point in time. For universities also, most of us would have completed our online classes and some kind of examinations or assessments would have been completed by now, largely speaking. And then there is a summer vacation. we are now eagerly looking forward to our next session, that is the academic year 2020. It is understood that we are not going to start as per our regular schedule, say June first week for some of the postgraduate programs or undergrad programs in the month of August. There is a broad indication and recommendation that the colleges and schools might open up somewhere towards end of August or September. September is something which is more audible these days, which means that we cannot postpone our learning agenda till September. We will have to do something before that. The students who have enrolled with us will have to be engaged. They will have to be taken forward with our institutional curriculum, institutional engagement, and so on and so forth. Now, how do we do that, and what are the issues? We will be focusing on that, and what is the role that technology will have to play. Now, we have a lot of learnings from India. We have a lot of learnings from abroad. If you see the COVID situation as it is emerging, it is giving roughly about 2 months of lead time for India compared to the Western countries. In certain countries where the ongoing previous academic year itself was disturbed, they had taken up few measures, and some of them had gone through lockdown and they opened up subsequently, and they invited the students back to campus, and there had been some resistances. There is a lot of anxiety, there's a lot of doubt in the minds of parents to allow the students, especially in school scenario, for example. If you understand what's happened in Denmark, when they opened the schools on 14th of April, majority of the parents have protested, and they said that we're not going to send our students and make them guinea pigs for your so-called experiment. Now, those are going to bear very high and heavy in the minds of parents, even for undergrad students and postgrad students, according to me. Now, students are not actually planning to take universities and colleges which are a little away from their place of origin. What it means is somebody who is living in Rajasthan will not be able to go to, say, Mumbai, or somebody who is residing in Hyderabad would not like to go to Delhi. So these choices are increasingly becoming evident, and therefore we have to work under these limitations. And whatever technology that people have been adopting in the West, for example, there are lessons for us to learn. Now we come back to our discussion, and here most of the panelists are from higher education, and there is no room for a discussion on school, and therefore we will largely focus on higher education. But I'm open to taking questions from audience, if any, with respect to school education. One or two questions can always be taken. I would like to start with this discussion when we have such distinguished panel. We would like to learn and understand from them what has been their experience in the recent past, and what are going to be their plans in the near future. So the entire world is going to be described by recent past to near future only, and I'm sure there are some long-term ramifications of this kind of adjustment. But the template for us as it is emerging is that there will be a phase where institutions will be in the settling down period. Now they come out of the confusion, they want to understand what's happening. That could be phase one. Till the time they make sense of, or they get a hang of what's happening, that's called settling down phase. There is a phase two where people will get used to building their infrastructure in terms of technology, in terms of adopting new technologies, and also building capacity of how to use these technologies. So that's going to be phase two. And the phase three, which is going to be a longer phase, and it's going to be very, very important in my view, is the phase of differentiation. The differentiation is that when similar kind of technology is available across various institutions, theoretically, everybody is going to be at the same level. Now, when we are all at the same level, for example, in the brick and mortar era, we all had large campuses, greenery, we all had facilities for hostels, we had facilities for library, computer science, so on and so forth, and minimum technology inside the classrooms. But then we still had to differentiate ourselves and prove our institutional effectiveness. The same is going to be a case here in phase three, or the maturity phase, where all of us, after having gotten a bare minimum of technology, we will have to differentiate ourselves so that our institutional philosophy is reflected, our institutional effectiveness is reflected in our delivery. I think these are the broad phases where it is going to emerge. And within this context, now I would like to ask the first question to the panelists. Uh, we have we have a very interesting member who is joining from Coursera, Shaurya. Shaurya, I would like to ask you the first question. That is, what are the different technologies that are available for us to go online, especially in the realms of, say, higher education? In terms of school education, we have learned that people are going beyond Zoom. Naturally, people will have to go beyond Zoom, beyond the regular conferencing, although it started with WhatsApp in some of the schools. Uh, what are the new tools and platforms that are available, especially for higher education institutions, which can actually adopt those technologies and run their courses? Would you like to just give a brief overview on that, and then we move to other points of discussion with you?
Absolutely, absolutely, Dr. Rao. And I cannot agree more with the framework that you had presented. You know, when COVID-19 hit and it was declared a global pandemic, the very first reaction was it took all of us by shock. And, you know, all the universities, higher ed institutions, students, faculty members, they were just pushed into this small window of time where they had to adapt and just change the way they operated, right? So that was the reaction mode. But more specifically, to answer your question, the way I see it, there are broadly 4 buckets in which I would place different kinds of technologies and tools, which are relevant for a particular educational institution, particularly from a higher ed perspective. So the first one would be tools for real-time communication, right? So if you've got to enable online lectures for your remote students, then you need to have something like a Zoom or a Skype or Google Hangouts, Microsoft Teams, etc., to enable that kind of ongoing communication with remote students. The second one is a lot of universities typically were, operating out of classrooms and on campus. And this, while this may not be here to stay just like this over a longer term, but in the immediate term, this has actually moved the entire offline classes to fully online. So it's like a total flip from 0-100 to 100-0.
True.
And that's been like the massive change which all of these institutions have gone through. And in that context, a lot of the universities, higher ed institutions were not fully prepared, both in terms of the capabilities and both in terms of the content that we have that could be delivered online to engage students at the same level at which a classroom engagement used to be. And then at the same time, the other is the aspect of the comfort of teachers and faculty to be able to deliver that learning online. So in that sense, the second component that is absolutely critical to ensure that learning doesn't take a backseat is some kind of MOOC platforms which can augment the university's academic curriculum through world-class content which is available readily. And Coursera is one such platform. There are others as well. So that is the second bucket of solutions that are absolutely needed for universities today. The third, I would say, is a learning management system, right? And that's again something which is important, because if you've got to administer learning and track and see how students are doing and track learning outcomes, then an LMS becomes a very effective tool to be able to manage all that learning on campus. And the last one would be, there is a whole lot of discussion around assessments and exams and proctoring. So I would say assessment and proctoring tools would be another fourth bucket that may be critical for universities and educations to evaluate. So those are the four that I would call out.
Very interesting. I think you have very nicely, as a techie, you have put those things into 4 buckets. Very interesting. Now, I think we move around the question with other distinguished panelists also, where they can share what have been their immediate reactions in adopting new technology. We have enough time. My recommendation to all my fellow panelists is that we have enough time, actually. We can speak very leisurely, and absolutely there's no problem. What I request is that we start with each one of you and understand what has been your reaction to this ongoing or emerging situation with respect to your particular university. Maybe I can start with sharing what we have done very, very briefly, And then if there is an opportunity of time, I can come back to it. I'll take only about half a minute. What we at ICFI have done is that we developed a learning management system. The communication tools like WhatsApp to Zoom to edX, variety of tools are there. All this is not going to help because it's got to be your own unique model. So we developed an LMS long back, about 2012, 8 years back. We developed a learning management system, and we call it Quick Fit. Am I audible? It's called Quick Force. Now, Quick Force is based on Moodle, open source, and then we integrated various features like class participation, taking quizzes, and class participation, which helped you to actually source what your seniors in the same school have participated on the same subject over the last, say, 10 years or so. And then you can access all those things and you can improvise on that. You can give a better example, and class participation questions, marks are assigned to you. And apart from the administrative features, which I will not get into at this point in time, which is common for many LMS, what was important was running the cases on this LMS, and we customized the cases into animated case studies or graphic. You have cases which are converted now, so that you have cartoons and graphic images which will help you grasp the whole case study very, very quickly. What used to be once upon a time a 30-page or a 40-page case study is now reduced to about 4 pages and 5 pages with images and important text given over there. That made the student, absorb and comment and react very, very enthusiastically. So there's a social graph also given. They can actually share their learnings across. And so with these features, we're running this Quick Force to the capacity of about 40 to 50% all the while. But now the reaction from our side is that in the interim period, we will be using this Quick Force 100%, and we will not delay anything, because from Monday onwards, we are starting the 2020 MBA batch in ICFI Business School. And we are actually starting the program. It's called preparatory program. In some universities and colleges, it is called zero term. But our Quick Force is well in time, and it's been tested over the last 8 years. So our response to this kind of situation is that we readily deploy Quick Force and run the entire preparatory program. And when the students are allowed to join the classes, whenever it is, it could be August or it could be September, we will be good to go. We can top it up and we can run additional courses wherein required. But that is the first reaction that is from ICFI that I'm sharing. Now, over to Silky Jain. You can start with that, and then we go over to Dr. Brar and Dr. Bawa.
So, hi, Dr. Sudhakar. Thank you. I think you summed up quite well. So, I think lockdown was a shock for the entire education fraternity. And because I think most of us, apart from the people who were actually giving distance learning, were not prepared for such kind of situation will ever arise. But I think now online has become a default mode of education during this lockdown period. And what several futurists and education technologists have been forecasting for so long, I think it's actually happening now. And for me, I see that higher education is going through a tectonic shift, and so is Tulaz Institute. So, of course, I remember, I think 14th March, we actually circulated that the lockdown period is going to happen and we're not going to be running the classes. So, going on, we started our classes on Zoom. Then we got a news that Zoom is not safe. We started with Google Classrooms. And but unfortunately, while we entered this online space, we realized that it's actually not helping us. And why, I'll tell you, because I have students from Tier 2, Tier 3, and of course metros, but what India is still facing a big challenge is the infrastructure. So we do not have a good internet speed. So, of course, with my team and everyone, we are blessed that we, with a startup called as iAugmenter, we immediately came up with an app. Because today, as we understand that 70% of the students do not have, laptops with them. because they all are mobile friendly and because of the budget problems and everything. So with this iAugmenter startup, we basically are addressing these problems. So first problem which we addressed in this app was the infrastructure, because now the students can readily use an app and at their home. Second problem which we addressed was that they can actually basically learn any time of the day. It's not has to be that, of course, the regular classes which are going online are there, but if they are facing any kind of an internet issue, they can definitely come according to their time and use the app. The third problem which we actually are solving here is the micro learning. So we have realized that while the classroom learning was going on, a 50 or 55 minutes session used to be an interactive one and it could last easily. But when we have shifted to online, we are seeing that a 55-minute session is not a convenient time. The session needs to be reduced. So that is why we have come up with the concept of micro-learning, where a chapter can also be divided into multiple subtopics. So here the student can actually have more attention. So micro-learning is also happening and micro-teaching is also happening. Along with that, we also have developed an LMS, like we also, I think Shaurav also speaking, you were also speaking on that. So every faculty can now take care of where exactly is the student's progress, how many students are actually learning, and followed by that, I think the main thing is the assessment. And of course, we are also having the assessment tool in that. So I think, yes, so we are well prepared for the coming lockdown, after lockdown, when we open our campuses. So I think we are going to be using this app in full-fledged, and we are going to be revamping it as in what required is. But I would also like to touch base one more interesting thing is that in this lockdown period, I have basically I realized the team rather from Tulaz that I think we revolve around three major things, which is capacity, willingness, and interest. So for a second, let's all of us believe, rather not believe, I think it's happening, that every teacher has the capacity to teach. Every student has a willingness to learn. Every teacher has the willingness to teach, and in the same matter, every student has the willingness to learn. But what about the interest factor? Is every teacher interested in teaching? I don't know. Is every student interested in learning? We really don't know that. And that's what the problem we were actually facing. I think all of us sitting here are running universities and colleges, and we were actually dealing with this term called as absenteeism. So I think interest lied that time also, interest lied today also. And it's high time, I think we should focus 40% of our factor in developing the interest into the online learning. And that's what I was talking about, the micro learning. And that's where we have incorporated this into the app. I think because if interest is not there, learning won't happen. Interest is not there, willingness won't be there. So I think lockdown period has actually made a new beautiful world, and especially for the education. Now we are well prepared for technology, which we were actually lagging behind. And I'm sure, like we all say, this is the new normal. The new normal after the lockdown will actually be again very beautiful. And yeah, I've got many other things to talk about. How are we preparing ourselves?
We'll come back to that. We'll come back. Thank you very much. You have nicely put it. See, in the situation that we are actually facing with right now, the belief that all of us are sharing is that the situation is not going to be like this forever. Otherwise, why are we actually teaching and why are we actually learning? It is one day going to be normal sooner. Therefore, we are trying to say that the gap that we are filling right now can be with the use of technology. And once we fill this gap, and once the regular classes commence as usual, well, there may never be business as usual, but for the sake of the discussion, let us say we're going to have our classes normally, say, from September onwards, or a little later, if that may be the case. At that time, we want all the students slowly to come to the school, come to the university, attend the classes and move forward. And ultimately, they are learning because they will have to work in the real world. Now, with the hope that they will work in the real world, which is going to be free of coronavirus, we start doing all these things. So it's more of hope, and it's more of a promise, and it's more of building ourselves and filling the gap right now. And therefore, what is emerging is the blended learning. When the situation is normal, we will have these online classes as well as offline classes, and we would have corrected ourselves to a world which is going to be very, very interesting to the student. As you rightly have pointed out, I thought I would come to that question a little later, but since you have preempted me, I will straight away get into that and then hand it over to another distinguished panelist. It is like this. The digital transformation is not just about technology, it's about the people that we have. Now, it's about the content that we develop, so on and so forth. All the students are actually digital natives. So only the teachers are supposed to be outside of the digital nativity, and therefore the challenge is more on the teachers. Erstwhile, all the teachers have been teaching in the classroom, and teacher has been treated as a supreme commander inside the classroom, and we never used to keep any camera inside the classroom how the session is going on. But now we are forced to actually record everything and teach online. Everything is transparent. Teacher performance, student interaction, everything is going to be measured and seen now with the help of variety of tools. In India and abroad, these tools are being increasingly used. And for example, the Wave live platform that Vedantu has got, it works on about roughly 75 parameters that capture the effectiveness of teaching and learning inside the classroom. A model like that in higher education perhaps is also in the offing. Now, in a scenario like this, when we are trying to make everything transparent, we are trying to reorient our faculty members to teach appropriately to the new requirements, we will be almost, watch my words, we will be almost competing with Netflix, because the attention span of the student is going to go to watch a movie or a comedy show or something else. Very unfortunate, but we have to be very attention seeking as well as teachers. We will have to be running the 45-minute schedule in a manner, as Silky has mentioned just now, very, very interesting. We have to use animations, we have to use games, we have to use quizzes, interactivity, so on and so forth. Well, I appreciate those points definitely. Now, I'll request Dr. Brar to chip in now and share the experience of your reaction. The university has stepped up in response to the COVID-19 and the subsequent lockdown. Over to you, sir.
Sir. So, first of all, when the lockdown started, it was very immediate action, and nobody was prepared to see this thing, that it will happen so fast. So means everything was closed, and so no one was knowing that what will happen in the future. So when the things are closed, then the university slowly start thinking that how they can start the teaching process. So in case the university has started that through the online modes, different modes they have selected. They have selected the Zoom, they have selected the WebEx, and other Google Classroom, etc. So firstly, when we start using these medias, then we are not aware about these things. So first we have to develop our skills, that how we can use these techniques, how we become aware about these tools. Then we have started conveying to the students through these tools, and our students were also not aware about these tools. And similarly, they have also developed their skills, that how they can use these techniques. Firstly, when they are taking the classes, in the offline classes, they are only interacting with the teachers, and they are interacting with their friends. And they are not using the library or online educations. After the lockdown, they will have to, they are forced to use these tools, and they start searching different types of tools, different types of websites, that from where they can get the different educations. So there are different means the YouTube we have the different types of lectures are available on the YouTubes. Then we have on the books, we have available different lectures. And then our faculty also started using the recorded lectures. And in the recorded lectures, the students can listen these lectures at any time, and they start learning that how they can manage their time. So time management will start. So differently with the COVID, we are developing our skills, different skills we are developing slowly and slowly. And this blended education is promoting us more as compared to the old education system which we are following earlier. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much for your inputs. We will now go over to Dr. Bawa to understand his experiences and the responses that institutionally they have put forth. Sir, please also understand, there is a question that is coming up from the audience, how the learning outcomes that have gone down, because online teaching cannot be very, very effective all the time. It has its own challenges, it has its own issues that we have to deal with limited orientation and limited capacities, and of course, the limited bandwidth that we have. I'm not even touching those access issues, which will come to a little later. We are only talking about urban-centric issues, urban-centric matters where a lot of people have got bandwidth which is easily accessible to them at no great cost. Still, we can be here, but within them as well, we have learning outcomes that are generally going down. Keep that in mind, and also, Dr. Bawa, I request you to explain the measures taken up by your university and help us learn something from that.
Thank you, Professor Rawat. Thank you very much. I'll start by saying that, this has been a kind of a learning experience for everybody. But all new age universities, I think, had already some plans in their mind, and some were already applying blended learning. If we talk about my university, like it was said by Professor Rao, we have created our own LMS. In fact, we have our own, we call it University Management System, Information Management System, UIMS, CUIMS. And, we were providing these students with all the learning material that the teacher is to use in the class beforehand. So in a way, these students were already preparing themselves to be online most of the times. In fact, if I may say so, that we were almost a paperless university, in the sense that students are not even required to fill their examination form. The moment a student is admitted, all his information is automatically exported to different sections. Like, for example, if a student has got admission, paid the examination fee, he doesn't have to prove. Nobody will ask him whether you paid it or not. As soon as it goes to the accounts branch, it is automatically shifted to the examination branch. The point that I'm making is that technology is already a requirement in a new age university. So we cannot do without technology. And I'm sure most of us had already acquired technology which was sufficient at least for the normal period. Coming to this situation, the first thing that we did was that the students have to be kept engaged. They must not, like you were saying, learning outcomes. Now, unless, and I'm sure many of us might not be even discussing learning outcomes with the students. Normally, it is the business of the university to see whether learning outcomes are being maintained or not. So what we did right in the beginning, we shared with you, like, for example, I am taking a little time, but I think it will be useful for everyone. Like, suppose I am a teacher, I start my class. In the first lecture, I will share with the students the background of that particular course, and also what learning objectives we have created. There are some objectives of educational objectives of each course we share with them. Then after every topic, we discuss with them what measure or what has been achieved by teaching this particular topic. And many a time students have this question, like especially engineering, I'm sure all of us are facing, why are you teaching mathematics to us? A chemical engineer will say, why are you teaching me mathematics? A computer scientist will say, why are you teaching me chemistry? But if I tell that student that, okay, this is the objective that we are meeting, so that takes care. And that, fortunately, we were doing already. Let me start in the new situation. Let me say that the new situation will have 3 new pillars. or three fundamentals. The first one, technology, it will remain. In fact, whether the normal is subnormal or normal, whatever it comes, technology is going to be the key factor in learning. And therefore, a very strong LMS is going to be the need of the hour. The second thing that will have to be done is innovation. Very rightly pointed out by other friends that every student is neither capable of learning at the same level, nor they have the technology or the bandwidth or the kind of gadgets that is required. This will be especially true about non-engineering, non-science, non-management students. So you will have to come out with innovative methods to engage these students. And the third one, of course, is flexibility. To my mind, flexibility is going to be the key to everything. Now, what we are perceiving is, as I said, my UAMS was working excellently. But now the situation is that we have to not only prepare for post-lockdown period, but also take this as an opportunity to upgrade our technologies. And just to mention that we choose Blackboard. Blackboard technology. We already have acquired that, and we shall be using Blackboard during our study period right now. Now, what is required to be done is, as we all know, the examinations, I think UGC and AICTE and everybody has allowed limited online examination, maybe for the final year students. So examination will have to take a little backseat when the situation becomes a little normal. Student will come and the regular examination will be held. But in the meantime, I think these platforms are going to be helpful. Like my friend from Coursera has said, you know, the role of technology, role of innovation, role of innovative ways to engage the students, to keep them busy is going to be very, very important. And again, there are models. There are models. You know, for example, I'll just share because I think everybody can use that. You know, when I introduce a topic for the new session where I'm going to, I start with a video, or I start with a conversation, or I start with something, some visual, which gives an idea about to the student that what exactly he or she is going to face. And then ask a few questions, engage students. And I may say that there are a lot of things available. Let's say I show a video which is available on YouTube, and I ask the student, only tell me what questions you are going to ask. Not judgments, only what question you are going to ask about this video, or what is your conclusion about that video. So this is another way of innovating so that you engage the student. So the challenge, as Madam Silky was saying, is number one, to make the teachers capable, empowered to use the technologies. I would believe that many of them are interested, but they may not be empowered. They may not be very much versatile, and they may not be well versed with the technologies which we are using or which are available. The second thing is to keep the student engaged. The biggest challenge, even I'm sure all of you will agree that even when the regular classes are held, the biggest challenge is to bring the student to the class, to make him stick to the class, because they don't feel interested. They don't feel things very fascinating. It doesn't fascinate their mind. It doesn't fascinate their imagination. So I think all these things, I will say that my university, what we are working out is, number one, there'll be a lot of flexibility because we'll have to maintain social distancing. So there'll be flexibility in terms of timings, there'll be flexibility in terms of delivery, and there'll be a lot of use of technology. So a student not in the class can also attend that lecture. If a student wants to attend, they can attend. So alternatively, I can bring them, half of them on one day, half of them on the other day, the others can use the technology. So all those kind of innovative things will have to be done. And maybe we'll have to work 6 days, maybe we'll have to do that. And let me also tell you that we have to make the student believe that this whole crisis is not going to affect their careers. Unless we make them believe this and do something concrete and real so that my student knows. And for example, I am engaging my students already. Exams or no exams, the exams will take. So when I'm going to conduct the examination, I'm going to give them 15-20 days break. Okay, you go prepare your examination and come back. But then in the meantime, we keep them engaged. And for that, we need technology, we need to innovate, and we need to use a lot of flexibility. And the kind of, the question that you were saying, I believe that it's not going to be normal in the near future. that normal will be a different normal, and we will have to create different pathways. We'll have to create different technologies, methodologies. But I think all these things are possible because I think we all understand. Once we understand, then I think we'll find ways. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Bawa. I think it's a very good all-round view that you have given in respect of what your university has initiated and also what is needed to be done even for others in this domain. It is very interesting, sir, that we are all getting up and we are all trying to understand. The biggest factor which is going to determine the success of this online journey and this digital transformation is going to be dependent on what is called empathy. Now, empathy is when we keep ourselves in the shoes of the students. This is in the context that we are given with right now. If our universities, institutions around the country, if we can quickly get onto the shoes of the student and try and make it more interesting in the ways that we have not done so far, in the ways that we have not been challenged as far, I think then the success will come to us. A good university versus a not so good university will be writ large, depending on how they are going to actually pace the content, how they're, some of the classroom strategies that you have mentioned. You will have smaller size of the classroom, you will have staggered timings, all that is very good. In addition to that, I think inside the classroom, when we are engaging with the students, even after 3-4 months down the line, if we are not going to be empathetic and we are not going to be in pace with the new generation, then we will be failing. I think that's pretty clear to us. I would like to now invite Sahil from Rishi Hood University to help us understand what measures they've taken, and also club something like how technology can be used for improving the skilling part, because in the past we have been doing a kind of a hodgepodge job. I mean, this is true to all of us. It is not that, I have done great, you have done great. Across the country, we have actually not taken everything seriously. Now we are compelled to take it very seriously, and therefore, in this context, I request Sahil to explain your response to COVID and also what suggestions you have for improving skilling by adopting technology. Sahil.
Thank you, Sudhakarji. So I appreciate the views and a lot of great points have come out from all the panelists about the use of technology. So I will not go much into that. I just want to highlight here that Corona has exposed some of the fault lines which were already existing in our education system. It's not that we have got new problems now and digital learning is a new solution to some new problems. There have been some a range of very structural, deep philosophical problems in the way we have designed our education system, and Corona has brought that, put it in our face. Now, this debate is not only about the mode of delivery. I mean, it's not only that through online learning we have changed our mode of delivery, and that is changing the situation. So the concept of blended learning in different ways has been there in the discussion on reforms for education. So probably 15-20 years ago, we were discussing the blend between theory and practice. Maybe 10 years ago, we were discussing the blend between hard skills and soft skills. Today, we are discussing the blend between online and offline, on campus and digital. But I think the way some of the panelists have also highlighted, the way we imagine learning itself is changing. So fortunately for us at Rishi Hood University, since this is our first academic year, we were anyway forced to be cutting edge, because that's the only way to succeed. So we didn't face a major trouble because of Corona, because we don't have any existing students. Our students will only be coming in August or September, depending on the public health situation. But some of the ideas around how and why we should learn, and not just at Rishi University, but a lot of other people in the education fraternity are exploring. I think those are now becoming very important, and I'll mention a few of them. So one is, it was mentioned earlier also, is flexible learning. So now in our curriculum also, we planned it in a modular way. And I want to highlight that learning will not be limited to an institution that a student is enrolled in. In fact, I'm looking forward to a time when a degree will not be provided by one institution. And I, as a student, will have the choice to study 20 courses from 20 different institutions. So initially, Sudhakar, you were mentioning that everyone will be at the same level now. I think that's one of the more important takeaways from Corona, rather than just the format of delivery. So Shaurya will be happy. He's from Coursera. So I mean, why not a time when we can just stitch together a degree on Coursera, and there are these different universities, and I can choose if I actually want to go to campus and study one of those courses. So that's the kind of change that the universities will have to become ready for. So we won't have the vantage point that since we can provide degrees, and since we have a campus, and since we have a hostel, and the classroom students will automatically come to us. No, we have to make it so meaningful and so exciting for students. And they will have absolute choice. I mean, maybe the regulation will not allow it for coming few years, but ultimately innovation will overtake regulation. And when that happens, the student, as a student, I will have all the choice of when I want to learn, from whom I want to learn, whether I want to, what proportion of my total learning I want to be make on campus, and what I want to do online, from whom I want to learn, which kind of subjects I want to integrate and mix together. So I think that's going to be a key takeaway for the faculty also. I think this is a golden opportunity. Till now, we have seen that the career of academia or teaching is not really the most aspirational career when it comes to the society. But now, because of technology, we see that one teacher can reach millions of eyeballs. So last night I was doing this masterclass by Malcolm Gladwell. So sitting in my drawing room, I can listen and I can learn writing from world's one of the best best-selling authors. So we didn't have that opportunity 10 years ago, or even 2 years ago. But now we have it, and I think students will make use of that. So the way we imagine institutions currently, I think that definition of institutions is going to change. Learning is going to be very much integrated with life, and it will become a part of our day-to-day activity. So we will have an absolute choice of whether we want to learn through, you're saying about competition from Netflix. I think that there's nothing to be scared about that, because content will actually play a very important role in whether we can generate excitement in our students or not. And we were teaching the students in a classroom. Now we've shifted online, and we see that the engagement levels have dropped. That's not because of it being online. That's because our content is not exciting for students. And that is what we have to do now.
Yeah, I think it's very interesting that Sahil, you have put it that some of the students, even now, without COVID, also were not interested in the classroom while they were sitting in front of us. Yeah. But we have not made a note of it so consciously, because our teacher has always been the supreme commander in the classroom, and there was no way we could have caught that. And we got the feedback from the students little later when the fate is accomplished. Okay, so that kind of scenario. But now today, with the advent of technology and with the readiness of our mind to use technology, everything will become transparent, and it is good for all of us. I think it is not just the fittest that will survive, but even the smartest ones who are amenable to change will survive, as has been quoted by one great philosopher. Now, what is important for us at this point is, are we orienting our faculty members or not towards this change? I'll tell you, most of you have large faculty members in the universities, and many others who are not in the panel also will have large faculty members. And the challenge is more or less similar. And whatever downtime that we have at this point in time in terms of summer vacation, if this can be utilized very well to orient these faculty members and give them a little bit of empowerment, that has come up in others in the panel also, that if we empower our faculty members to design the content in a manner that is overall conforming to the norms of the institution, but then there is freedom to experiment, there is freedom to create something very, very interesting. For example, I'll give you offline examples of what we used to do in the past. There's a faculty member using WhatsApp, used to write poetry and then attract the students. And they used to get connected, and then there should be responses and all. People used to talk about stories. They used drama as a tool. Variety of these things. In the offline zamana, we also used to have what is called guest lectures. Some of the specialists used to come to the classroom and talk. Now today, probably in the blended learning, even when everything is going to be normal, we will still have these master classes being beamed at us inside the classroom or even available for them asynchronously. They can actually go through those interesting master classes whenever they can from the best of the people in the domain from around the world. And if those interventions are done, it's going to be more interesting. If we can have object oriented gamifications inside the content, I'm sure the students are going to be glued to your content. As long as the class duration is going to be smaller and more interesting, as Silky was also mentioning, is going to be very, very interesting. And when these interesting factors, like as if we have to compete, like as if we are in a race, if the faculty members get up, then yes, it's going positive side of COVID and the restrictions and the lockdown and colleges not being open in the near future is that we are all going to have a double check on our own competencies and our own orientations and ability to actually adapt to the new scenarios. And that's what we are supposed to be. We are teaching the students that they have to be adaptive, they have to be open-minded, they have to be flexible, they have to see the diversity, they have to be inclusive. We are telling all these things. Hey, it's time for us to actually practice what we have been preaching all the while. I think it's a fantastic scenario. I would like to now call upon Shaurya to come back and help us. Are there any suggestions from you with respect to improving skilling by use of technology? I'm sure you will mention a lot about Coursera. Please go ahead and mention, and also tell us something which we are not aware of in terms of the available tools and techniques that we can use to improve skilling specifically.
Sure, Dr. Rao. And there were a lot of interesting points which came from the distinguished panelists. And I'd like to touch upon some of these. And I think they follow a theme per se. So let me go to Silky's point first, about the bandwidth and the interest part that she spoke about with respect to students. And I think partly Sahil answered that by saying that, it's probably not the student, but the user experience, the student experience, which needs our attention. And I'll give a couple of examples. And before I go to kind of specific areas, I'd just like to provide some context. So what we, right after COVID-19 was actually declared a pandemic, what Coursera realized is that a lot of universities across the globe would face this challenge of not having right engaging content. And as an industry leader, we wanted to help. So what we did was we actually launched what we called Coursera's Campus Response Initiative. And across the globe, we said, if you're a university who's impacted by coronavirus, Coursera will offer our entire Coursera for catalog for free up to 5,000 students to your university and and all the faculty members as well. So you could actually make use of Coursera for Campus catalog and then administer learning on your campus while your students were actually remote. And a lot of universities have actually availed that particular offer. As we speak, there are about, I'm just referring to some numbers here. So as we speak, there are about 6 million hours of learning, which has actually been recorded on our platform in the last couple of months. And there are about 3,800 courses which are available. In India, there are about 2,000 plus higher ed institutions, including 26 IITs and IIMs, who are actually consuming this content. And we have over 2 lakh students who have benefited from this initiative in India. And one of the things which we realized is, it's also about, how you can quickly transition from off campus to online. And a classic example is, Duke Kunshan University. This is a partnership between Duke University and Wuhan University, which was at the epicenter of COVID-19 outbreak. When it hit them, they turned to Coursera and leveraged our Coursera for Campus platform to bring all the students on a platform and then administer remote learning. And this happened in a matter of just a few days. I also read an article where I saw that IIM Udaipur is using our free initiative at this moment to allow their students to take credits from the institution by taking up courses on Coursera. So these are great ways, and just the sheer feedback that we've got from these new students who've come up on our platform in a matter of last 1.5 months, they're rating our courses. So we have visibility of, what are the ratings that they're giving to our content. They're leaving behind subjective feedback. And what I can tell you is that there is a great amount of enthusiasm among the student community. So we typically get course ratings like 4.7, 4.8, 4.9 against 5. And this is very heartening to see. And the kind of engagement that we've been able to drive with this community is amazing here. So that's one part of it. And I would also build on Sahil's comment about, this is all something, COVID is probably being an accelerator. The problems remain the same.
Right.
And there is a lot of research which actually was anyway published before COVID-19. And so Holon IQ, which tracks, higher education landscape, they were anticipating that by 2030, the demand for higher education will increase by an additional 350 million, which is 34 crore students globally. Right. Also, McKinsey estimates that by 2030, up to 375 million, which is 37.5 crore people, may be displaced by automation and will need to change occupations. And reskilling them will require more education. And here is the size of the problem. To meet this higher education demand, at least 2 new universities will need to be built each day over the next 10 years.
That's pretty big.
Yeah, so, and COVID-19 has established a new normal, and the world will move towards a much more effective system of education. And I believe blended learning will definitely be a crucial part of that. There's also, a quote that I came across by Tom Friedman, which says, big breakthroughs happen when what's suddenly possible meets what is desperately necessary. And I think this is the time when we're actually, this quote truly fits into, how the world is operating right now. So yeah, I mean, in that sense, I guess the future of work is going to be still uncertain for a while. There will be pressure on jobs, travel, and physical distancing restrictions will apply. And therefore, there could be multiple scenarios. There may be limitations on the number of students on campus and in classrooms. So some students may be in the class while others may be remote at the same time. There could also be reduced mobility, which would mean not 100% students will be back at campus for a very long time. And there could also be recurrent cycles of disruption where campuses open, reopen, and close for a while and then reopen. And these are all situations which are great reality for us to kind of look into and prepare for. And I would say that it will be absolutely detrimental for universities to let go of the gains that they have made with respect to adoption of this high quality job relevant online learning, which has been accelerated during these times of crisis, because this is what will become the strength of the university going forward. And we should capitalize on this, use this cultural shift among the students and the faculty members to drive that long-term change, which we all wanted for a very long time. So those are some of my thoughts here. And I'm happy to kind of...
We'll come back to you, Shaurya. We'll come back to that. The very interesting thing that I kept Dr. Tabraiz to speak towards the end, or at least after this kind of initial discussion, is for the reason that I'm sharing now. The reason is that we in educational institutions, we are always playing a catch-up with respect to, say, industry. Whatever there is an in-demand kind of course that's being sensed through various organizations, we quickly launch those programs in our institutions, and then we develop resources and we try to supply those. So it's basically kind of a catch-up kind of thing, rather than having a holistic view of what is actually emerging. The leadership role that the institutions will have to take up in the near future, I think is also accelerated, apart from the other things that we have talked about. There should not be that kind of phase difference. One of those things could be by integrating or forming alliances with tech giants in industry, which is also a big discussion in the Western world currently. I'll come back to that discussion a little later. But I'm inviting Dr. Tabraiz Ahmed to help us understand how this blended learning will be further matured, will be further harnessed by use of artificial intelligence, machine learning, and also how some of the practical courses can be made more interesting by deployment of augmented reality, which is being already done, but not in the manner that it's going to be a textbook case at this point in time. But sir, request you to throw a light on all these factors based on your experience, how the deployment of new technologies can enhance and make it more interesting and value added to the students, and how it can be completely taken advantage of by the students, given the current generation of students being quite amenable to some of these technologies. Over to you, Dr. Tabriz Ahmed.
Thank you, Sudhakar Rao, for giving a very interesting area for discussion. So I was hearing everybody has given very valid points about that, how we are going to shift because of the COVID-19. In fact, I'm a strong believer that still we are lacking the good quality content. So I think Shaurya has mentioned, Sahil has mentioned, because ultimately you raise the question regarding what is the differentiator in the coming future. So quality of content is differentiator coming future, because you see all the open sources are not very good quality content, very old content. And the way the market is growing, things are growing, we have to upgrade the content, and we should have very good quality content. And that is mostly, these are paid content, and the small universities and school and government school may not actually have the capacity to buy and then know these kind of the content because of the budget issues and all. So the strong focus is required on all areas to develop a good quality content for all areas, to put a differentiator for the university. And second thing is that I'm very happy to see the change right now, because my area is cyber law and IPR. I'm a strong believer in the AI, internet technology, online sharing of the classrooms and all. So what I've seen from my experience of last 20 years, for the first time, those who are actually strong believer that technology cannot take the place in the classroom, now they have to change themselves, their thoughts, because this period has really justified that this is the future and everybody have to change. So those who are old believers, old professors and teachers, even they are criticizing any young faculty is going to use the PPT in the classroom. They used to say, oh my God, this faculty is rubbish because he is using PPT in the classroom. He is reading from PPT. It means he is not having any content knowledge. So, but the idea of PPT is that to provide the maximum learning in the classroom. For example, if faculty will deliver a lecture, he is only engaging a very small group of the classroom. But if faculty is using the multimedia in the classroom, PPT, music, video, and then showcasing a lot of databases, and only he is using some small lecturing in the classroom, he is trying to engage maximum student in the classroom. So that is a big challenge. So a person cannot engage much, but if person can engage and use technology in the classroom, he can use maximum engagement and engage everybody in the classroom, and then learning will start. So the first point is that the first benefit is that because of lockdown, everybody has realized the power of this online learning and LMS and all these things. And now there is a great shift. The first thing is required the training of the young faculty and student, that how to use maximum technology, because these are nothing is new. I'm seeing last 10 years, in fact, Blackboard and everything is in the market. But now we have realized the importance. And those good universities, even when I was in UPS Dehradun, we used to have Blackboard. And now in the Galgotia University, also in the GD Goenka University, we are using LMS. So almost every top university already they have the online medium, they have a learning management system, they have outcome-based model, they have defined the outcomes. But the question was always there from some faculty that it is not useful because of the attitude. So this particular change has given a good impact that everybody realized the importance. And now we have to go on building on this particular aspect by training of all these faculties and students to realize and get the excellent benefits. Second question is that how we can really get the skill orientation, because why somebody will go to the foreign universities, Harvard, Cambridge and Oxford and living in India, because they want to have a kind of composite culture, they want to see and interact, because the actual learning starts from peer learning. So what I see the challenge for online education, that peer learning will be a challenge because of online education. Now, Shaurya can help us to build some more technologies that how peer learning will be protected in the online medium. Because the thing you can learn from peer learning, there's no match. So online medium, all the technology companies, they have to work out something that peer learning, the benefit we get by engaging to different culture, different kind of people from all backgrounds, and the kind of learning will happen in a classroom, how we can have real benefit by the online medium. Third point you raised regarding that use of AI in the education technology is a very, very important area to do a lot of research. Because today morning I was delivering a lecture that how the AI is affecting the this IPR. and then how we can use AI to have the better IPR. Because what happened, we used to have the human being innovating all the ideas, and then human being was able to get the patent as an owner or the inventor. But now AI will be innovating. So any intelligence can innovate, and because of machine learning, he can go on innovating. The question is that who will be able to, who will be the owner and who will be the patent holder of that new innovation. So AI is coming in a big way. For example, if you can share my experience of the legal education, earlier days, if you have to go to a particular library and search a case in AIR, and you require sufficient time to find out a case, you have to require 1 hour to find a very landmark case just to get and do Xerox and read. But currently, there are a lot of top-class online journals. You just cite the problem, you cite the reference, you will get very particular portion to cite in a particular case. So earlier days, you require a very strong research team to find out for a lawyer what is the relevant portion to be cited in the case to win the case. But because of AI will tell you from 10, 15 cases what is the actual case and what portion to be cited, what to the case to support your argument. So that's why in AI will be helping the legal education and helping the student and teacher what cases to be taught, what should be kept in the syllabus, and what is more relevant area for student teaching learning process. Same way it may also help the other field of education. So AI is a very strong support for the process. For example, because of AI, it can filter out a lot of contents that was job of the teacher. So teacher is now having very small role to play, and teacher now can focus on very objective and skill-based teaching learning process than to waste his time in the other processes. So AI is a very important area, and I'm sure that will be going to support a lot for the improving the teaching learning process, engaging students in the classroom, and finding out the real objective-based and skill-oriented learning in future. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thanks for that great introduction. Now, sir, the one question that is visible from the comments of the participants, as well as it is lingering in our minds, is that earlier we told the children at home not to hook to devices, and now we are saying please attend your classes on Zoom, attend your classes on any platform that your school is connecting with you. Earlier we did not allow students to browse their mobiles in the classroom because we were teaching in the classroom and all the attention was supposed to be given to us as the teacher. That has changed and changed for good now, and therefore the competence of teacher is more visible and measured in terms of competing with the online open source of information that is possible. It will be cross-checked with all of that the teacher is going to teach. So therefore the role has changed completely. You can't actually teach what's available openly. You will be a facilitator, and you will be ensuring that interpersonal relations and learning from peers in the classroom is possible, and that will be facilitated. Counter views, how to actually absorb diversity. I mean, when I say diversity, it is diverse views and still agree to disagree. Those things will be possible. To some extent, it's possible through technology. To some extent, it's possible in classroom. But you will have to have certain things in the classroom as well. Having said that, sir, how the administrative part using ML and AI in a regular role of the teachers, how the administrative part is relegated to this technology, and then they get more time for building unique content. I think you can throw some light on certain measures as an advice for various teachers, how they can be free of the administrative actions and focus entirely on content building, so that we use teachers for what they are good at. For example,
very important.
checking the answer papers, for example, that can be relegated to technology. Predicting outcomes of the student, that can be relegated to technology. Attendance and so on and so forth. Class participation, how many showed up, how many times one participated, that can be asynchronously developed over a period of time and checked over a period of time. Whereas the teacher can focus on the most important part called content. Yes, sir.
Very good question you raised. Actually, there's always a problem in the university that faculty raise the question that they're not utilized for what they're hired. So they'll be doing a lot of admin work instead of teaching. So now the time has come. The faculty should only teach and should try to focus on research, because what I'm a strong believer that only a good researcher can be a good teacher. And then the way the market is growing, the fields are growing, he has to be very strongly, trying to keep and pace with the time and learning with the new areas and new ideas to add value in the classroom. Regarding the attendance part, already we have a lot of softwares that, in fact, in one of the UPS, we used to have the biometric. Student and faculty will go and swipe, and then the attendance will be automatically generated. And at the even the parents by login from their house, they can see what time his ward was checking in the classroom. And then if he is not coming in the class for 2-3 days, he can then call and check why you're not going to the classroom. So and then again at the end of the session, we used to have the bar list, and we just go on the just log in and print out the the bar list that it is showing, it is available every day, device, timing, and then what time he entered to the classroom, how many days, and percentage. So already we have software available, and then doing all these activities. Regarding the evaluation part, is very important area to go forward, that how to evaluate the process. When I was in in UPS, I experimented this online examination for mid-semester examination, that we used to have the choice-based system, and also we used to have multiple choice. And what was happening, that we used to ask a 40 question and 20 minutes time, and then faculty will get 20 minutes, and the moment he will submit, he will get results. And that in 20 minutes, everything is done. And earlier days, may see faculty will select the question, he will submit, somebody will process, and then exam will be happening, copy will be distributed. So in fact, around 30-40 hours work is saved by the faculty, and faculty that time can utilize in the teaching learning process. So my point is that I already told that it is a great shift in the attitude. So this COVID-19 has supported us in changing the mindset of the faculty and the student, and also the management, that really this technology can be helpful and raising the standard of teaching learning process. But it is a matter of, again, attitude. Those faculty who are very tech savvy, were active, those students who are tech savvy and active, they can really and fast imbibe the technology and improve. But again, the problem is the same. Those who are not willing to imbibe technology and use technology, still there will be facing challenges in future. So the point is that we have to motivate the faculty student, we have to properly train them, we have to use good technology, latest technology, and also management should come forward to help the faculty student to utilize and also focus especially on the actual learning and research orientation.
Dr. May I add something to this?
Yeah, I was about to come to you, sir. Please, you have to take it up.
Actually, you see, the system has to be relooked. You see, teacher's role used to be that teacher comes and we give them, this is what you have to teach, and you teach. In fact, I think leaving aside a few universities in our country, very less emphasis has been given to upgradation of the skills of the faculty. In fact, empowerment, I mentioned earlier also, but I would like to give an example. You see, empowerment of the faculty is very, very essential. For example, in my university, from 1st to 15th of July every year, it is FDP time. The whole university, all the 1700 faculty members have to be present there. And again, what kind of FDP we are talking about? We talk about FDP based on 4 things. Number 1, the new pedagogies and new technologies which are in the market, they have to be trained in those. Number 2, those new technologies, technical skills related to their own field, which have come recently. Many teachers might not have studied when they were students, might not have even discussed when they were some other institutions. So based on 3 things again. Number 1, their own analysis, self-analysis, that I feel I am weak in this. Number 2, getting feedback from the industry. What are the new technologies which we must teach to the student, and therefore we introduce those. And the third thing is any changes in the curriculum, because we change curriculum every 2 years to at least 15-20%. So based on those changes, we have to upgrade the skills of the faculty. To my mind, empowerment of the faculty is very, very essential. And I'll wind up by saying that today's student doesn't need to be given knowledge alone. My take is that a student, again, has to be enabled and empowered. Enabled with the current technologies, empowered to de-learn, relearn, and change. You know, earlier there used to be knowledge quotient alone. Knowledge quotient alone, I think, is not very, very relevant. What is intelligence quotient still remains. It is important. But I think physical quotient is very important. I think emotional quotient is very important. And these days, even spiritual quotient is important. A student has to be imparted all those things which I think he or she has to face in the world. We have to make them constant learners. We have to make them lifelong learners. And we have to make them human beings which are capable, empowered, and enabled in their own field also, and good citizens of the country also. So I think n number of technologies will come. But unless we are able to empower our faculty first and then our students, I think the problem doesn't get solved. And this will help in also making these students capable of getting the best jobs available in the market. The people in the market, I'm sure all of you know that nowadays knowledge quotient is not very important. Intelligence quotient is, but now they are looking at physical quotient, emotional quotient, and latest spiritual quotient, how the people look at the world. And what we have to prepare actually has to be planned that way. Our curriculum has to be that way. Our curriculum planning, delivery has to be that way. And for that, we have to empower these. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. You rounded up very well. Sir, I have another point. I think it is to other members in the panel. Maybe Shaurya can take it up. Is there an existing platform? This is a question being asked by one of the members who is attending this discussion in the comment box. You can also read that. Is there any existing platform where we can link it up and add it to what we already have? It's a kind of blended technology for blended learning. I think that is the kind of question one is asking. If you can please answer that, it'll be great.
Sure. So, most of these technologies right now, I think there is this challenge in the industry at the moment where different players, different industry partners have actually their own solutions. And we may not yet have a standard platform which everyone is plugging into. However, there are systems where, like for instance, if I talk about Coursera in particular, we do have API integrations which are possible with existing LMS, for instance. Mm-hmm. So if you have an LMS in your campus, there may be a possibility for Coursera to integrate with that particular LMS. Then there are also assessment tools which can also be brought onto Coursera, which are not native Coursera assessments, for instance. And that is also something we can achieve through APIs. Now, there are obviously technical feasibility questions there, but then we have an implementation team which typically works with our clients to be able to achieve that. So I don't have a very generic answer to that whether it is possible for everyone and every kind of technology, but yes, there is a whole lot of progress that has already been made around those lines.
Right. Thank you. What I have read somewhere, and I think 3 years back, there was a presentation made to me regarding online proctoring, online examination conduct, how it can be foolproof. Of course, it has to cut the regulation that is existing, and acceptance has to come for that kind of technology. But I think sooner this situation is going to foster that kind of modification in the technology itself. As Sahil has mentioned, he used the right words, that the situation demands that there's a change in regulation, so be it. I think some time back, I was made this presentation and I looked at it. It's very, very interesting. And recently I read somewhere that MUni campus gives this kind of online examination conduct where there are limited hassles. I mean, there's no 100% hassle-free kind of technology at this point in time. But that's when I'm sure in higher education also, we have some new solutions coming up. I've seen a team which worked with CIA in the US, and then they've come back to India and developed a lot of security measures for conducting online examinations and all. They had a pretty robust system. And I'm sure some of the universities are adopting, especially those who run completely online in the past. But now I think many others will have to take it up.
And if I may just add here, so Coursera actually does offer about 19 degrees which are fully online, and there's full level of proctoring there. So it's like it's the same degree that you would typically get on a campus. It's the same entrance procedure, and those are fully proctored. And there we have the technology where, the camera will come up, the keystrokes are measured, your browser will actually get locked. So all of that is available in terms of technology. However, online university degrees actually still come at a higher cost than compared to our MOOCs, which are massive open online courses. So maybe if we deliver this at scale and there are enough number of users, the cost of those technologies could potentially come down and fit into MOOCs as well. But the technology is available, so to say.
Yeah, you have a great time ahead, actually, Coursera and the like.
Actually, yeah, we're a company who wants to make as much impact, and I know this is probably one of the key defining problems of this particular century. Bridging the skill gap, and this has such a huge social impact. We all feel very, very passionately about this. So
great. I'll now invite Sahil to answer that one question which is appearing on the comment box. Is that how do we actually, there's been enough discussion on empowering faculty members, making sure that we orient them and all, but there are certain faculty members and teachers who are writing the comments saying, I am a teacher, tell me what I have to do apart from making a very good content. I will also add one or two comments after Sahil gives his inputs. Over to Sahil.
Thank you. So I'll take a little philosophical digression here when it comes to teaching. So till now, what has happened is for many of us as teachers, teaching has come as a career by chance, not by choice. And when that happens, we will always be in this dilemma of what else what more can we do to improve the way we are engaging with students. So the role of a teacher now is not. So developing great content is definitely one of the key factors that will differentiate a good teacher from a not so good teacher. But just the way the world is moving more and more towards integration, I think a teacher should not remain a teacher. As a subject teacher. So, for example, in higher education, we see that good professors, Professor Tabriz was also mentioning this, good professors are a lot into research and industrial consulting, their own startups, or guiding their students for their projects. But we've not seen much of this in the school K-12 sector. So why not teachers take up some roles which are beyond just classroom teaching or even online teaching? I think that's not only going to provide them a great exposure to the outside world, but it also will improve their own skills and their own excitement towards engaging with their students. So we should not look at a teacher as a career in silo. It's a career which is integrated with the rest of the society.
Great. I think that's a pretty good answer. And I'm quite convinced that if we change the orientation, philosophically at least, to think about one's role in the days to come, I think it will have a greater impact in our own fundamental shift in the way we look at our subject and the way we look at other students and the entire domain itself. Thank you very much. Now, I'm coming to Silky.
Yeah, I just like to add a point in this. I've been hearing for a long time. I could not control myself. I think we're talking about student training and massively. I think it's time for massively retraining the faculties now. When we talk about a fresher entering a college, we conduct induction. I think it's time where we need to have induction programs, online teaching learning mode programs for the faculties, because I think we cannot just simply blame the faculties because they were used to a classroom teaching. Now, immediately in this semester, we are asking them that they become rockets and the online teaching should be 100%. I think it's not justice from our part as well. So as management, as universities, we should also be looking at platforms wherein we should basically train our faculty so that they can give a good online delivery for that matter. And also one point which has been missing so far is we are talking about learning. And I think psychology of a student is one point which is right now no one is addressing. Students used to take admission in a college not just because he was getting a degree and used to attend the classes. There were a lot of other things like the campus infrastructure or meeting his friends, enjoying the canteen. attending cultural programs, having some inter-competitions amongst each other was one of the things where students used to be engaged at. In earlier times, we used to talk about online, like the overall development of the student. I think today's time, why are we not talking about the overall development of the student? It is still going to be valid. He still has to have a good career. He still needs to give interviews to the companies. Still needs to be placed. So as far as Tulaz is concerned, we were very known or favorites amongst the students because we used to give an identity to a student, which of course maybe in his childhood time or school time he never had. So keeping that in mind, for which Tulaz Institute was known for, we are not leaving that point unheard or untouched. We used to have an induction program of 7 days for last 7 years for the freshers. I think we are now planning ourselves to go online this time for a 7 days or maybe 10-day induction program. So I think apart from just regular subject syllabus and teachings, we should also be talking about these psychological problems which the students and the parents are facing, because we as educators only can tell them.
Great. That's a great point. I think it summarized some of the questions also that were unanswered in the past. It's very good. We need to do that, and campuses are going to be back to normal. That will definitely be fulfilled. Otherwise, there's no point in learning. Why we are preparing the students for a real world, and as I said in the beginning, with the hope that we limp back to normalcy, maybe after 3 months, 4 months, 5 months, 6 months down the line. Now, I'm going to open up one question with Dr. Bawa. Very quickly, very, very short, crisp answer I request from you, sir. Somebody is asking you, and this is a general point which we touched upon as well, in areas where the network is not, the bandwidth is not very high, where 4G and 5G is required, only 2G is available, especially J&K area, how your university is going to help the students reach out to them? Very quick answers from you, sir. After that, I have a bigger topic to talk about.
The way forward to this is, you see, we have to transform and translate the content into whatever mode it can be delivered. And many a times we are converting files to Word mode, we are converting files to different kind of media so that the students can get. I think it's all managing your protocols. So if we can manage the protocols, we can reach out to the last student. And like it was mentioned earlier, we have WhatsApp groups, we have so many other media. So we are trying to make everything reach the student. But yes, I agree that it can't be 100%. It can't be 100% where we have to send some graphics, we can't send. Where we have to send a video, it may not be possible. But then I think it is possible to engage with the students. And I think in all possible manners, we give them and we entertain their queries. I think what is most important, it was very rightly said, that we have to cater to the students. Unless we listen to them, we have to listen to them, we have to address their problems. And like it was mentioned, orientation program, I think orientation program or induction program must also consist of the career options which you are going to provide to the student. Let their mind be fascinated about the discipline in which they are going to study, so that they kind of stick to that field and they know what the university is going to make of them after 3 years or 4 years or 2 years. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. It's a very engrossing discussion and there are many more topics to be discussed. But very quickly, I flash it. You may answer, you may not answer this. But what we are seeing, and when I heard the podcast from Scott Galloway recently, he says that big tech giants are going to forge alliances with universities like Google, like Facebook, like Microsoft, like Apple. All these guys are going to make alliances with educational institutions and universities, and combined they offer the programs which are going to be the programs of the future. Some of these tech giants have already been the brain in automobiles, for example. They themselves would not like to manufacture automobiles, but they are the brain in the automobiles, like some of the automotive cars which are going to be almost self-driven. And therefore, in technology partnership that they're going to have with the universities, it is likely that they can take care of the tech side of it. They can take care of the data crunching side of it. They can take care of the analytics side of it. Whereas a university can talk about, or university can bring to the table something about their certification, something about the limits within which they are working. And together, it will be a very good option, both for the stakeholders from these universities, as well as for the stakeholders from those tech giants, in order to double up their revenues, in order to actually, because universities have got huge access to students across the world. Now, how one can monetize this access by not rejecting the students, but selecting the best of the students. I'm also told that some of the universities are very good at identifying and selecting the students based on what they write on social media. Are they having bigoted comments? Are they extreme in their views? Are they anti-diversity? I think all these factors will be used, and the universities are selecting some of the students to be on the campus, so that the campus is completely a responsible citizenry kind of campus. Now, how the tech giants can come and help them in terms of delivering these programs is something very interesting.
Yeah, I'll just take half a minute to say.
No, sir, it's not required. It's just a thought for us.
Yeah,
I'm going to invite.
What I would like to make is that we already are signing MOUs with the industry in bringing their experts to the campus and sending our students there, so that we can.
That's very different. That's very different, sir. I'm talking about a major shift in what Apple is going to tie up with your university and things like that. So that's a. I don't know whether that's going to happen in India, but that's a thought for all of us to do. Now I'll invite Ravi Gupta ji to sum up the discussion, and
Thank you so much.
And we are already beyond time.
Yes.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Yes. Actually, we are already like delayed, and we are. I was like listening to the panel by hiding the camera, and it was a amazing discussion, engrossing discussion, and a lot of great feedback you all can see from the audience on the chat. Like I was enthralled, in fact, I will say. And thanks to all the speakers, and especially our moderator for moderating the session so nicely. And I have learned a lot from today. And I request all the audience, if you have liked this session, please like and share this video on the Facebook and YouTube, so that more and more people learn from the amazing discussions we have just had. And I again thank Shaurya, I thank Sahil, Silky, Dr. Yadvinder Singh, Dr. R.S. Bawa, Professor Tabrez Ahmed, and Sudhakar Rao for an amazing session. Thank you so much. And with this, we are ending here. Thank you.
Thank you all those people who logged in, and also my co-panelists. Thank you all.
Thank you all of you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.